Imagine this. You're standing on the edge of a cliff, the wind howling in your ears, dark clouds swirling overhead. Below you, waves crash against jagged rocks, relentless and unforgiving. Your heart's pounding, your palms are sweaty, and you feel like one wrong step could send you tumbling into the chaos below. Now, what if I told you that this isn't just a dramatic scene from a movie, it's a picture of life? Every single one of us faces storms like this. Maybe it's a job, loss, a breakup, a health scare, or just that gnawing feeling that you're not where you're supposed to be. The question is, how do you stand tall when the wind's trying to knock you down? That's where the story of the unbreakable man begins, not with a superhero in a cape, but with a regular guy named Marcus, living in a small American town in 2025. Marcus wasn't born unbreakable. In fact, he was pretty average. A 32-year-old mechanic with a mortgage, a beat-up pickup truck, and a habit of scrolling X way too late at night. But life has a way of testing us, doesn't it? And for Marcus, the test came fast and hard. It started with a phone call. His boss, a gruff guy named Dave, told him the garage was shutting down. "Economy's tanking, Marcus. Nothing I can do. Last day's Friday." Just like that, the steady rhythm of Marcus's life wrench in hand, grease on his knuckles, paycheck every 2 weeks, vanished. Then, as if the universe wanted to pile on, his girlfriend of 3 years, Sarah, sat him down that same night. "I need space," she said, her voice soft but firm. "I don't know who I am anymore, and I can't figure it out with you." By the end of the week, Marcus was jobless, single, and staring at a stack of bills he couldn't pay. The storm had hit, and it hit hard. Most of us would crack under that kind of pressure. Maybe you've been there, feeling like the world's caving in, like every step forward just pushes you 2 steps back. Marcus felt it too. He spent the first few days numb, sprawled on his couch, a half-empty beer in hand, wondering how it all went wrong. But here's the thing. Marcus didn't stay there. Something inside him shifted, and that shift is what this story's all about. It's about how an ordinary guy stumbled across an ancient secretone that's been around for over 2,000 years and used it to become unbreakable. That secret? It's called Stoicism. If you're new to it, don't worry, it's not some dusty philosophy for old guys in togas. It's a practical, down-to-earth way of thinking that's just as relevant today as it was back in ancient Rome. Stoicism teaches us that we can't control the storms life throws at us, but we can control how we face them. And for Marcus, that lesson started with a beat-up book he found in a thrift store of all places. It was a Saturday afternoon, and Marcus was wandering aimlessly through town, trying to clear his head. He ducked into a little shop called Second Chances, mostly to avoid the rain. There, on a shelf between a chipped coffee mug and a stack of faded romance novels, was a worn copy of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. The name caught his eye, same as his, and the price tag said $2. He figured, why not? He didn't know it yet, but that $2 book was about to change everything. It was a Saturday afternoon, and Marcus was wandering aimlessly through town trying to clear his head. He ducked into a little shop called Second Chances, mostly to avoid the rain. There, on a shelf between a chipped coffee mug and a stack of faded romance novels, was a worn copy of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. The name caught his eye, same as his, and the price tag said $2. He figured, why not? He didn't know it yet, but that $2 book was about to change everything. Back home, Marcus cracked it open. The words were simple but heavy, like they were written just for him. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength, Aurelius wrote. Marcus read it again, slower this time. Power over his mind? Not his job, not his relationship, not the bank account that was bleeding read just his mind. It was a light bulb moment, but it didn't fix everything overnight. Storms don't just blow over because you read a good quote. Still, it planted a seed. Over the next few days, Marcus started experimenting. He'd wake up to the same mess silence, where Sarah used to hum in the kitchen, an inbox full of rejection emails from job applications. But instead of spiraling, he'd ask himself, what can I control right now? One morning it was just making his bed. Another day it was hitting the gym instead of the fridge. Small stuff, sure, but it was like he was building a shield, piece by piece. See, Stoicism isn't about pretending everything's fine. It's not toxic positivity or slapping a smile on a bad day. It's about facing the hard stuff head on and saying, "You don't get to break me." For Marcus, that meant looking at his job loss not as a failure, but as a chance to rethink what he wanted. It meant letting Sarah go without bitterness, knowing her choice wasn't his to carry. It was tough, brutal even, but it was the start of something bigger. And that's where we'll pick up next time. Marcus's story isn't over, not by a long shot. He's just beginning to figure out what it means to be unbreakable. And trust me, the lessons he's about to learn from ancient wisdom are going to hit home for all of us. So there's Marcus, jobless, single, and clutching a $2 copy of Meditations like it's a lifeline. The storm's still raging around him, but something's different now. It's not that the problems are gone, it's that he's starting to see them differently. That line from Marcus Aurelius, "You have power over your mind, not outside events," keeps rattling around in his head. It's simple, but it's not easy. How do you control your mind when the rent's due, the fridge is empty, and every job listing wants 5 years of experience you don't have? Marcus decides to test it. One gray morning, he's scrolling X, doom-reading headlines about layoffs and inflation, when he catches himself. His chest tightens, his jaw clenches, classic spiral mode. Normally, he'd let it drag him down, maybe crack open a beer at noon to numb it out. But this time, he stops. He sets the phone down, takes a deep breath, and asks, "What's in my control right now? The economy? Nope. The job market? Not really. But his next move? That's on him." So instead of stewing, he grabs a notebook and starts jotting down idea skills he could learn, side hustles he could try, even places he could move if it came to that. It's not a fix, but it's a start. And that's the first spark of the fire within him. Stoicism calls this the dichotomy of control, focusing only on what you can actually change and letting go of the rest. It's not about ignoring reality. It's about wrestling with it smarter. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." For Marcus, not the Roman emperor, that meant rethinking what losing really looked like. Was he a failure because the garage closed? Or was he just a guy in a tough spot figuring it out? The next few weeks are a grind. Marcus picks up odd jobs, fixing a neighbor's lawnmower, hauling junk for a guy down the street, but it's not enough. The bills keep piling up and the landlord's texts are getting less friendly. One night he's staring at a shut-off notice from the power company when the old panic creeps in. He could feel sorry for himself. He could call Sarah and beg her to come back, or rant online about how unfair life is. Instead, he flips open Meditations again. This time he lands on, "What need is there to weep over parts of life?" The whole of it calls for tears. It's grim, but it hits him. Life's always been messy. Everyone's got their own storms. Why waste energy crying over this one? That's when Marcus stumbles into another Stoic gem, amor fati, or love of fate. It's not just accepting what happens, it's embracing it, like you'd embrace a tough workout because you know it makes you stronger. Marcus starts small. The shut-off notice? Okay. It's a chance to figure out how little he really needs. He lights a candle, cracks a window, and sits there in the quiet, thinking. No TV, no distractions, just him and his thoughts. It's weirdly peaceful. He even laughs a little, imagining what Sarah would say if she saw him now. "You're turning into a caveman, Marcus." Maybe he is, but he's a caveman who's still standing. Days turn into weeks, and Marcus keeps building that fire inside. He signs up for an online course, basic welding, something he's always wanted to try. It's cheap, and he can do it from the library's Wi-Fi when his internet gets cut. He starts running every morning, not because he loves it, but because it's free and it clears his head. Little by little, he's not just surviving, he's shaping something new. The storm's still there, but it's not drowning him anymore. Then comes the real test. One afternoon, he's at the grocery store picking up ramen and a discount loaf of bread when he sees Sarah. She's with some guy tall, clean-cut, the kind of dude who probably has a 401k and a dog named Max. Marcus freezes, his stomach twists, and for a second, he's right back to that night she left. But then he remembers. Her life's not my business anymore. He can't control who she's with or what she thinks of him. All he can control is this moment. So, he nods at her casual, not forced, and keeps walking. She looks surprised. Maybe even a little impressed. He doesn't stick around to find out. That night, Marcus sits down with his notebook again. He writes, "Today sucked. But I didn't let it own me." It's a win. Small but real. Stoicism's teaching him that the fire inside isn't about never feeling the heat, it's about not letting it burn you down. Aurelius said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." For Marcus, every setback's starting to feel less like a wall and more like a stepping stone. And that's where we'll pause. Marcus is finding his footing, but the road's still long. He's got more to learn about virtue, about what really matters, and about how to turn that fire into something unstoppable. Stick with us because the next part's going to show you just how deep this ancient wisdom goes. Marcus is starting to get it now. The storm hasn't let up, bills are still stacking. The job hunt's still a slog, but he's not drowning anymore. That $2 copy of Meditations is dog-eared and underlined, and every day he's finding new ways to put those ancient words into action. He's not just surviving, he's building something inside himself, something solid. But here's the thing about growth. It doesn't come without weight, and for Marcus, that weight's about to get heavier. It's a Tuesday morning when his phone buzzes with a text from his mom. "Dad's in the hospital. Heart thing. Call me." Marcus feels the air leave his lungs. His dad, Big Jim, is the kind of guy who'd wrestle a bear and then grill it for dinner, tough, loud, unbreakable in his own way. The idea of him hooked up to machines doesn't compute. Marcus drives the hour to the hospital, his mind racing. By the time he gets there, the news isn't great. A heart attack, surgery pending, and a recovery that's anyone's guess. His mom's a wreck, his sister's flying in from out of state, and suddenly Marcus isn't just fighting his own battle, she's holding up everyone else's too. This is where Stoicism stops being a cool idea and starts being a lifeline. Marcus sits in the hospital waiting room, the fluorescent lights buzzing, and flips open Meditations. He lands on, "Concentrate every minute like a Roman, like a Manon, doing what's in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness." It's not about fixing his dad's heart or erasing the worry on his mom's face. It's about showing up right here, right now, so he does. He grabs coffee for his mom, cracks dumb jokes to keep her from crying, and listens when the doctor explains terms like stents and bypass. He can't control the outcome, but he can control this. That's when Marcus starts to wrestle with something deeper. What really matters? Stoicism isn't just about enduring, it's about living well, even when life's throwing punches. The old Marcus might have obsessed over what he'd lost, his job, Sarah, the easy days. But now, sitting by his dad's bedside, he's starting to see that those things weren't the point. The Stoics called it virtue, courage, wisdom, justice, and self-discipline. It's not about what you have. It's about who you are. Big Jim wakes up groggy after surgery, his voice raspy but sharp. "You look like hell, kid," he says, managing a grin. Marcus laughs. It's the first real laugh in days. "Yeah, well, you're not winning any beauty contests either, old man." They talk slow and quiet, about nothing and everything. Jim mentions the garage closing, asks how Marcus is holding up. "I'm figuring it out," Marcus says, "one day at a time." His dad nods like he gets it, and for a second Marcus wonders if Big Jim's tougher than any Roman emperor ever was. Back home, Marcus keeps that question, what matters, in his head. He's still broke, still scraping by, but he's noticing something. The welding course he started? It's not just a lifeline, it's something he's good at. He spends hours in the library watching videos, practicing when he can borrow tools from a buddy. One day he welds a little metal box roof, but solid, and it hits him. He made this. Not for a paycheck, not for anyone else, just because he could. It's a small win, but it feels like virtue, doing something well for its own sake. Then life throws another curveball. His sister Jen calls late one night stressed out. She's got 2 kids, a shaky marriage, and now she's worried about Dad. "I can't do this, Marcus," she says, her voice cracking. "I'm falling apart." Marcus could brush it off. He's got his own mess, but he doesn't. He thinks of justice, that Stoic idea of doing right by others. "You're not alone," he tells her. "We'll figure it out together." He spends an hour on the phone, just listening, and when she hangs up, she sounds lighter. It's not a fix, but it's something. Marcus starts seeing virtue everywhere. It's in the way he thanks the cashier at the gas station, even when he's down to his last $10. It's in the self-discipline of running every morning, rain or shine, because it keeps him steady. It's in the courage to keep applying for jobs even after 20 rejections. Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Marcus isn't arguing anymore, he's doing it. The storm's still there, Dad's recovery is slow, money's tight and the future's foggy, but Marcus feels the weight shifting. It's not crushing him, it's shaping him. He's not unbreakable because nothing hurts. He's unbreakable because he's learning what to carry and what to let go. And that's where we'll hit pause again. Marcus is digging into the heart of Stoicism now, finding strength in virtue, but there's more to come. The ancient wisdom he's leaning on has one last big lesson, and it's going to test him like never before. Stick around, because you won't want to miss what's next. Marcus is tougher now. There's no denying it. The guy who used to crumble under a bad day is welding metal, running miles, and holding his family together, all while the storm of life keeps howling. That beat-up copy of Meditations is practically a roadmap, guiding him through the mess with ideas like control, love of fate, and virtue. But here's the thing about being unbreakable. The universe doesn't just let you coast. It throws one last test to see if you've really got it. For Marcus, that test comes crashing in like a tidal wave. It starts with a call from his buddy Pete, who's been letting Marcus borrow welding gear. "Hey man, you still looking for work?" Pete asks. Turns out a small fabrication shop in town. Needs someone part-time, nothing fancy, just cutting and welding basic parts. It's not a dream job, but it's a paycheck, and Marcus jumps at it. The first week goes smooth. He shows up early, works hard, and even gets a nod from the owner, a quiet guy named Ray. For the first time in months, Marcus feels the ground steadying under him. Maybe the storm's finally breaking. Then it all goes sideways. One Friday, Marcus is finishing a job welding a bracket for some machine when the power flickers. He pulls off his helmet just in time to hear Ray cursing in the office. A big client's pulled out, orders are drying up, and the shop's bleeding cash. By Monday, Ray calls everyone in. "I'm sorry," he says, voice tight. "We're closing. 2 weeks tops." Marcus feels that old pit in his stomach open up. Another job, gone, just when he thought he'd caught a break. That night, he's back on his couch, the shut-off notice replaced by a new one for the water bill. His dad's still recovering, his sister's still leaning on him, and now this. It's too much. He slams Meditations shut, screw the Romans, what do they know about 2025, and lets the anger boil. He could call Pete and vent, or hit X and rant about how life's a rigged game. For a minute, he's right back to the old Marcus, ready to break. But then he stops. He remembers something Aurelius wrote. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. The injury here isn't Ray or the client, it's life itself kicking him when he's down. Breaking would be letting it win. So Marcus takes a breath, opens the book again, and reads, "You must build up your life action by action, and be content. If each one achieves its goal as far as possible and no one can keep you from this. It's not about the shop closing. It's about what he does next." This is Marcus's breaking point, or it would have been, if he hadn't spent months forging that fire inside. He decides to lean into every Stoic lesson he's learned. Control. He can't save the shop, but he can hustle for the next gig. Amor fati. He starts telling himself this isn't a loss, it's a push to keep moving. Virtue. He'll do the right thing. Even now. The next morning, he's up early, running through the drizzle. then hitting the library to scour job boards. He texts Pete. Know anyone else hiring? I'm not done yet. Pete's impressed. You're a machine, man, and promises to ask around. A week later, something clicks. Ray calls him back. Look, I feel bad about how this went down, he says. I've got a buddy who runs a bigger shop across town. They're swamped, might need a welder. I put in a word for you. Marcus drives over that afternoon, welds a test piece and nails it. The foreman, a grizzled guy named Hank, grunts, start Monday. It's full-time, better pay than the last gig, and Marcus can feel the tide turning. But here's the kicker. He doesn't let it go to his head. Stoicism's taught him that good breaks and bad ones are just flips of the same coin neither owns. Him. Back home, Marcus sits with his notebook. He writes, lost the job, got a better one. Same me. That's the real win. The storm didn't stop. He just got stronger. His dad's improving. His sister's coping. And he's paying bills again. But more than that, he's living those ancient words, Aurelius said. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Marcus gets it, no. Happiness isn't the job or the money. It's the man he's becoming. And that's where the story's heading to its close, but not quite yet. Marcus has one more piece to figure out. How to carry this forward not just for himself, but for everyone watching him rise. That's coming up next, and it's going to tie it all together. Marcus stands in his small garage, the flicker of a welding torch lighting up the space. It's been a few months since the shop closed and the new job kicked in. The paycheck's steady now, his dad's back to barking orders from the recliner, and his sister's found her footing. The storm hasn't vanished, life doesn't work that way, but Marcus isn't the same guy who crumbled under it. That $2 copy of Meditations sits on a shelf, worn and loved, a quiet reminder of the ancient wisdom that pulled him through. This isn't the end of his story, it's the beginning of who he's becoming. The new gig at Hank's shop is tough, but good. Marcus is welding bigger projects, no steel frames, custom parts, and he's earning respect. One day, Hank pulls him aside. You've got a knack for this, he says, scratching his beard. Keep it up and I might put you on lead jobs. It's not just the work, though, it's the way Marcus shows up calm, focused, no whining. The guys notice. Pete even jokes, what's your secret, man? You're like a robot. Marcus just grins. Not a robot. Just figuring out what matters. That's the final piece of the Stoic puzzle for him, living it every day. It's not about one big moment of triumph, it's about the small, steady actions. Marcus Aurelius wrote, your mind will take the shape of what you frequently hold in thought, for the human spirit is colored by such impressions. Our Marcus gets that now. He's not chasing some perfect life where nothing goes wrong. He's shaping his mind to handle whatever comes, good or bad. Take the other week. A big order at the shop got screwed up, wrong specs, tight deadline, and everyone's scrambling. Old Marcus would have panicked or pointed fingers. New Marcus steps up. He grabs the blueprints, works late with the crew, and gets it done. No drama, just results. Hank slaps him on the back after. You're a rock, kid. Marcus thinks about that later. A rock not flashy, not loud, just solid. That's what Stoicism's made him. It spills over everywhere. When his dad grumbles about physical therapy, Marcus doesn't argue. He just drives him there, quiet and steady. When his sister calls, stressed about her kids, he listens, offers what he can, and lets her figure the rest. He's not fixing the world, he's being the guy people can lean on. That's virtue in action, courage to face the day, wisdom to know his limits, justice to do right by others, discipline to keep going. One night, Marcus is out for a run, the cool March air biting his lungs. He stops by the river watching the water churn past. It hits him. This is Amr fata-loving the whole messy ride. The job losses, the breakup, the hospital waits, they weren't punishments. They were the forge that shaped him. He thinks of Aurelius again. The art of living is more like wrestling than dancing. Life's a grapple, not a waltz. And Marcus is learning the moves. He starts sharing it too. Over beers with Pete, he talks about the book. The idea is nothing preachy, just real. Pete's skeptical at first, sounds like old guy stuff, but he listens. A week later, he texts Marcus. Okay, I Googled that Stoic thing. Not bad. It's a small ripple, but it's something. Marcus wonders how many people out there feel like he did, lost, battered, ready to give up. Maybe they could use this too. And that's the man he's become. Not unbreakable because he never bends, but because he bends and doesn't break. The storms will keep coming. 25's already throwing curveballs. But Marcus is ready. He's got his mind, his actions, his fire. He's not just surviving anymore. He's living, and living well. So what's the takeaway from Marcus's story? It's this. You don't need a toga or a throne to be a Stoic. You just need to start where you are, with a job that's tanking, a heart that's hurting, or a day that's gone off the rail, and ask, what can I control? What can I build? Ancient wisdom isn't dead, it's alive in every choice you make. Marcus found it in a thrift store book. Where will you find it? That's it for this tale, but it's not the end of the journey. If Marcus's story hit you, if you're ready to wrestle life like a Stoic and come out stronger, stick with us here at the Daily Stoic Mindset. Hit that subscribe button, tap the bell, and join us next time. We've got more stories, more lessons, and more ways to help you forge your own unbreakable spirit. See you soon, because the next storm's coming and we'll face it together.